Hello dear viewers, a very warm welcome to our channel. It's very good to have you here. In this video, we are going to have a look at some of the top symptoms of a bad fuel pump. This kind of fuel pump is electrically driven. It's usually mounted inside the fuel tank. It has a strainer on the lower side where fuel is sucked into the fuel pump, and then by the help of electric motor, it will pump fuel from the fuel tank to the engine and to the fuel system. Now, when the ignition switch is turned on, it will receive electric power from the ignition, and then it will start pumping fuel before the engine is being started. If this fuel pump goes bad, there are always some indications. Let's have a look at some of the top indications of a failing fuel pump. One is engine sputtering. The most common symptom of a bad fuel pump is engine sputtering or sometimes engine stalling. A sputtering engine means that it is not achieving full combustion, so it will start coughing, and sometimes you hear jerking and vibration associated with that kind of sputtering. This occurs when the fuel pump is not delivering enough fuel to the engine. There will be an inconsistent flow of fuel to the engine that can lead to engine sputtering. A failing pump can cause the engine to sputter. It can cause it to jerk while driving, which can be very dangerous, so it should be addressed immediately. So engine sputtering, that engine coughing that sometimes happen, can be associated with bad fuel supply, which is directly related to bad fuel pump. 2. Difficulty starting. Bad fuel pump can cause difficulty starting the engine, especially when the engine is cold. If your engine has difficulty starting, if you need to crank for a long period before the engine is started, if this especially happens after refueling, it could be a sign of bad fuel pump. As we've mentioned earlier, the fuel pump has to pressurize and supply fuel before the engine is started. Once you turn the ignition key on, it should start that humming sound, and it should deliver fuel. Pressurized fuel has to be made ready for the engine to start readily. Now, if that is not done properly, then you will have difficulty starting. So difficulty starting is another symptom of a failing fuel pump. Third on the line is reduced power. When the fuel pump is not functioning properly, the engine may experience a significant reduction in power. If your car has reduced power, or if it struggles to climb uphill, if it struggles to accelerate, it could be a sign of bad fuel pump. If your car is slow to accelerate, or if it starts to feel sluggish, then it could be the fuel pump not providing enough fuel to let the engine run and let the engine accelerate. So reduced power can also be an indication of a failing fuel pump. Engine surging is number 4. Another symptom of a bad fuel pump is engine surging, which occurs when the engine revs up and down without any input from the driver. So if there is unbalanced and irregular operation of the engine, if the engine speed starts to climb and then drop by its own, surging, that could be an indication of a failing fuel pump. Then number 5 is low fuel pressure. If there is a fuel pressure indicator somewhere on the fuel system, a bad fuel pump can cause low fuel pressure, which can lead to poor engine performance and decreased fuel efficiency. 6. Check engine light. A malfunctioning fuel pump can trigger check engine light, that is indicating a problem with the fuel system. So if the check engine light is illuminated on your dashboard, you have to scan it in order to figure out what is causing the check engine light illumination. So fuel pump, bad fuel pump, and problems that are associated with bad fuel pump can sometimes be cause for illuminated check engine light. 7. Stalling, especially at high speeds. If your car stalls while driving at high speeds, it could be due to bad fuel pump not providing enough fuel to the engine. So when the vehicle is being driven at high speed, then continuous fuel supply is required because engine is revving at high speed. So that requires and demands continuous supply of fuel. If the fuel pump can't keep up with the demand of the engine, then the engine will start to stall at high speed. So stalling at high speed can be an indication of a failing fuel pump. Number 8 is rough idle. A bad fuel pump can cause the engine to idle roughly, or it can cause it to idle erratically, which can lead to other problems related to car performance issues. So fuel has to be supplied readily, especially before the engine is started, and it should continue being supplied once the engine is started. If that is not the case, the engine cannot keep up idling smoothly. So rough idle, especially at cold environment, could be an indication of a failing fuel pump. Number 9 is noisy operation. If the fuel pump is noisy, if you hear whining sound or buzzing noise coming from the fuel tank, that could be an indication of a failing fuel pump. This could be caused by worn out fuel pump parts. It could be caused by failing armature support bearings. Either of these can cause noise if the fuel pump is wearing out. So noise generated from the fuel tank can be an indication of a failing fuel pump. In extreme cases, a failing fuel pump can also cause the engine to completely shut off, leaving you stranded on the side of the road. So it is therefore very important to address any sign of bad fuel pump as soon as possible to prevent further damage to your engine. So these are some of the symptoms that are exhibited by a failing fuel pump. If you happen to notice any of these symptoms, especially if multiple of these symptoms have started to appear on your engine, then definitely your fuel pump is going down. It has to be replaced or it has to be repaired. Usually we don't repair them, we simply replace, because these electrical fuel pumps are usually maintenance free. They need to be replaced once the performance drops. So that is what you have to do if you happen to notice that the fuel pump is going bad. There are different things that can lead to premature fuel pump failure. Using dirty fuel is one of the common reasons that causes fuel pump failure. It will prevent the fuel pump from working efficiently, or it can cause it to fail entirely. Over time, residues that get accumulated inside the fuel pump, residues that build up inside the fuel pump can clog the passage inside the fuel pump, leading to failure. So dirty fuel is one of the main reasons. This usually happens especially if you are using a fuel stored for a long period, will happen to produce gum and grease, and that can cause the fuel pump to struggle to pump, and that can clog and choke the fuel pump. So dirty fuel is one of the leading cause of premature fuel pump failure. The other thing that can lead to premature fuel pump failure is driving on low fuel. Driving with your fuel tank almost empty is especially bad for fuel pump. You should at least try to keep a third of a tank full. That will provide sufficient fuel for the fuel pump to operate efficiently. When there is no enough fuel in the fuel tank, then the fuel pump will start running dry. It will start to have excessive wear at the bearing because they are not adequately lubricated. So driving on low fuel is another cause for premature fuel pump failure. And the other things that can cause premature fuel pump failure is if there are deposits or some kind of restriction in the fuel system. One of the main reasons for fuel pump failure is excessive buildup of deposits in the fuel rail, in the fuel systems, or even in the fuel injectors. This will require extra hard work from the fuel pump side, reducing its performance and shortening its lifespan. These are some of the top things that can lead to premature fuel pump failure. Always make sure that you have sufficient fuel inside the fuel tank, and always make sure to use fresh fuel. If the fuel is stored for a long period, it will accumulate moisture, it will start to build gum, and that will cause fuel pump failure. So always make sure that you are using fresh fuel from the fuel pump, from the fuel station. Dear viewers, that is all we have for you regarding symptoms of a bad fuel pump. If you like this video, please smash the like button. If you are new to this channel, do consider subscribing and turn on notification so that you will be the first to get notified whenever we come up with another video. Until then, stay safe.